All right, welcome back. We're continuing on Auth server. We have set up the CRUD operations for grant and grants. So the next one that we're going to do is clients. So let's go ahead and dig in here. So let me start the backend, and we're just going to start just the web app. And I deleted a component that I didn't need over here, so we'll delete it up here and then here. Okay. Still says this is failing in the client component. Okay, the backend is running. We'll now start the UI. Like that. I don't see one here for clients. It's just the default. Okay, so now when we look at the page, here it is. Hey there, Hector HSC. How are you doing? Welcome to the channel. If you have any questions when I'm working on, please don't hesitate to pop them into the chat. Appreciate the support. What's going on here? So it is working, so I need to rerun this one. Let's go ahead and set these as the startups and try it again. This is the one we want. Give it just a second here. Come on. There it is. And with data. So let's go ahead and apply these things. The first thing that I want to do is on the styles.scss, anywhere I have a mat card, I want to add in a padding of 10 px across the board. The next thing that I want to do is look at grants. And so we have this table, which we're going to bring over into clients. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put this inside of a mat card. And then we're going to have a table. I also want to have a P here with a class called a mat h1, which is going to say clients. And in here, we're going to have a couple of these things. It's going to be on data source. The first one is called client name, like that. And we want it to be a client. And we don't know what the router is yet. So what I want to do is I want to have a different method in here, and I want to say it's going to be a click event, and it wants to take us to a navigate to client with my element.id. And then I need to include a router link to make it look like a link, like that. And this is going to be my client name. We have a client ID. Which looks like this. And then I have another one here, which is the client secret. And then we have two more that I added in here just for flavor. The first one is called the count post logout redirect URIs. Which is this. Of my element.id. And then I want to do it for the redirect URLs. Like that. And this is a count of the redirect URIs, which is this one. You already have navigate to client here defined. The other one you want to have is a grant type. So we're going to open one more here, which is called a grant type. Like that. And then we can delete all of this. Okay, we have to add in those last two lines that specify the rows, these two. And now in my grants, TS, I can copy some of this. We want the here in the start, or in the constructor, I want to add in the mat dialog. And then I want to, oh, not yet, not a mat dialog, not yet, sorry. I want to add in the data source so that we have up here clients and grants. I need to have my displayed columns. And I know like the first one was client name, the second one was grant type, the third one was client ID, the fourth one was client secret, and then we'll go look at what the rest is. My data source is a new mat table data source of my iClient. Down here, when we get the clients, I want to do this dot data source dot data equals this dot clients. And that should be it. So when I look at this front, it's giving me some errors here. Could not find column with ID, client ID. So if I look at this again on the client's HTML, this is called client name. This is called element.grantID. This is my element.clientID. ID, element. This is called client name, grant type, client ID, client secret, the count of the post redirect URIs, and then this one. There it is. So we do not have the padding applied on Matt Card. And you have the table inside of that. If I look at grants, we didn't put this one inside of a Matt Card. And now what I want to do is in the SCSS, we have client name, grant type, client ID. We'll remove client secret. Like that. That has to match in order for if I was going to have a sort on there. And I don't have any sort of pagination or anything. I don't care about that. That looks pretty good. Now my maximum width, I want this to be a maximum width of 400 pixels for my client card. And then I also want to do the same thing for the grants. Now that's a little too small. I wonder if I should put a flex box on it. Let's just look at that really quick. If I look at my client's HTML for my client card, if instead of this I change this to be a display flex flex 01 the table is happy now. So this one you want to have the direction to be a column. And then that's actually good. We like that. Okay, if I look at grants, I want to do the same bit of code that I just did. Good. Okay, so now in clients, we want to add our delete. So down here, I want to first add in the HTML a new one of these, which is going to be called a delete client. Or did you call it remove? I think you did. No, I think you did call it delete. You remove grant. Like that. And this is going to be a button now, which looks like this. And it goes to remove client. Man, I feel like I should make a base class to put all these subscriptions in. Anyways, right now we have navigate to client and then these other ones, and we want to have a remove client, which is going to pass in an ID, which is a string. And it's just going to, we're going to do the confirmation box again. And then I want to do a this.http. So we need to add that in. Private HTTP is an HTTP service. Dot. And if I look inside of this one, we need to say a new one called a remove client, which is just going to be an ID. And we can copy this, bring it up here, delete clients. If it's a 204, then we do a remove client, which we've already defined in the reducer. Okay, so we need to do a confirmation box. So I'll look at my grants, and we do it here. And we want to add in map dialog at the top. Okay. That should do it. So now when I'm looking at the clients, I need to add in the remove client, which is here. If I want to remove it, it will ask me. And that's it. Now over here, in my UI project under clients, uninstall ngx loading, uninstall ngx toaster, uninstall this one too, and the animations. That's it. Everything else is fine. Okay. So in my client's controller, I need to add in, just like we have in the grants, this delete. And this is going to be a delete client asynchronous. And we're going to pass in the constructor with the OAuth server data access layer. It's just called iData access layer, and then we want to have a protected read-only iData access layer called data access layer. When I look at this now, we're going to add these in for a client. So we have a delete client asynchronous, a update client, which we don't care about, and the create, because those are going to be a little bit different. So now when I go and I look at the data access layer, and we have a public virtual asynchronous task of a Boolean for a delete client asynchronous. I'm just going to copy this and bring in my clients, and then we're going to remove it here. And that's it. And then we'll run the project. That should be good to get started here. Maybe just a tiny little bit more. Okay. Wait for this to load. Okay, so you can see our clients here. When we do the delete confirmation, I don't like that those aren't centered, but we'll deal with that in a little bit. And the delete worked successfully. And just to confirm that, I'll rerun it, and we only see the 3. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in the, man, I really want to move these to a base class. Second. I could essentially put the data for everybody in all the places and then just do it in one time. I think that would be a faster way to do it. Let's just try it. I'm going to make a new folder in here, and I want to call it we're going to just make a file, and I'm going to call it a base.component.ts. And let's copy in grants. So when I'm looking at this now, I can get rid of the component, and we're going to call this a abstract class called base component. Doesn't have that. Has the store. Sure, it has the service. Sure, it has a dialog. Like that. Like that. And so now if I look at grants, I could do a extends base component. And now this needs to probably have like a base, right? Something like this. Okay, let me look at that real quick. We want to say TypeScript. We want to do a controller with base. Oh, sorry. A constructor with base. It's super. And I think we just call super. Trying to remember. Here we go. Perfect. And then it's the store, HTTP service, and mat dialog. I'm very confused why that's upset with me. Oh, I see what's wrong. For some reason, that didn't come across. And so we already have grants, right? Why would they have separate declarations? It should be the exact same thing. This looks all fine. And I just do oh, it's private. That's why. So if I look at this again and I did a protected Sicilian Minsk, thank you so much for that follow. Appreciate that, man. If you have any questions on what I'm working on, please don't hesitate to pop them into the chat. And now when I look here, these are protected. Like that. So we don't need to worry about these two. But I do want to add this data source here. And I want to do a super. So can I do a base? So now I want to look up in TypeScript. I want to override a function, but call the base. That's not what I want. Call superclass methods from the, so it's just super.ng on init, like that. We don't need to worry about this on destroy. This base component should take care of this implementation, so this is redundant. And that's it. Then we can get rid of those. And these here. Now it's much cleaner. So let's see if this all works. We check our app. Looks good. We look at grants. That looks good. So now we can use that everywhere. So if I look at my grant, I'm going to change this to be a extends my base component. And then I look here, we need to do a super, and this is going to be a protected now. And it's a store HTTP and then a mat dialog. If I look at my base component, we already have grants. So I can get rid of that. Okay, so my issue here is that if I look at my base component, I want to make a function here which is called assign grants, which is going to take in a number of these grants and just do this. So now I can do this dot assign grants. And I don't think that'll cause a problem in scoping because we're using TypeScript and it's already happy with me. And then we want to do another one for assign clients. Which is just this. So now when I look at my grants component, when we do I'm going to see if this works before I change it. So in clients, sorry, in grant, which one was it? I was working on clients, right? No. I was working on grant, singular grant. We still want the route and then I want to do my super.ng on init like that. And then down here, we're going to have a assign grants, which is a grants of a iGrant array. And we want to do the super.assign grants, and then this. We don't need the onDestroy anymore. We don't need this one. And that's it. We'll check it again. Grants looks good. We open a new one. I call it whatever. Save it. There it is. It didn't create, or did it create? It didn't seem to update, did it? It is. So it didn't update because in grants, instead of doing this, I want to do a assign grants of a grants iGrant array. We're going to do super.assign grants. And my grants, and then I want to do this .data source .data equals this .grants. There it is. And then if we look at it one more time, it's good. Okay, so we've got that now. So the next one is clients. We want to do this again. This is a extends base component. We don't need clients or grants. And if I look at my base component, we're going to add in these two subscriptions, these two properties, this needs to be all protected stuff. And then I want to do a super of my store HTTP mat dialog. On this one, we need to have a new function called assign clients. And we want to do a super.assign clients of clients, and then apply the data source. Okay, on this one, I want to add in these two. And then I'm going to have another one here for assign post logout redirect URIs, which is a client post logout redirect URIs of iClient post logout redirect URI array. And then also another one which is just redirect URIs. And then this one is going to be a this.assign post logout of my client's post logout redirects URIs. And then this one is going to be a this.assign redirect URIs of my client redirect URIs. And then we want to add these two here. And then destroy all of this. That's it. These functions I can move to the base class. So we just have navigate, assign, and redirect. That looks great. Client is done. Okay, this is going to be a grant ID. This is a grant ID. Like that. That looks great. So I think we're done here with that. And now we're ready to move on to client. So let's add our create. So on here, if I look at grants, I'm going to take this new button and I want to add it in above the table. And I want to say create new client. Like that. So now I'm going to do a ng generate component called a client. So now I want to, in my app routing module, we're going to add in a new route called client, which goes to my client component. So when we're in client now, I want this to extend my base component. And this is going to need my protected store of what it's called app state. And then we have a protected HTTP of HTTP service. So it's a store HTTP, and then the last one is mat dialog. Like that. And what I need to do is in this other project, I need to look for my mat option. So on client component, we're going to say This is a new P with a class equals mat h1. And I'm going to say create a client. And we want this to be on a mat card. And then we have something here called a mat card title, like that. And then we have a mat card content. And then we have a mat card actions. So in content, I want to first have a mat form field, which is going to have a mat option in it of my ng4 equals, and it's a let grant of grants, and my value is going to be my grant.id. I forgot to put a mat select up here. And I want to say that that is a ng model of my we're going to call it grant ID. In this, I want to have a display for my grant.grant name. And now in client ID, I need to have a grant ID, which is a string. Let's take a look. Okay, it didn't work. It's telling me no errors, 3 user messages. If I look at my base component, what just broke? Was when I unloaded and went to client, right? It's right there. That's what it was. Okay, so now when I go to client, we can see that I have the selections here. And we're good. So I should have something like a change. On change, we'll just do that, of my event or something like that. And then we'll just have a on change of a event. Okay, so let's look at a mat select event when change. It's called selection changed. Still not firing. It's doing it on click. I don't want that. Selection changed. Selection change, singular, output. But I want to see what it is here. It's that way. So that's output. So that's right. Let's just try that again. And then let's see what's happening here. By user, not by backend data change. You can use view model as a way. In HTML, it's just mat select selection change. Oh. Derp, 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 derp. All right, now it'll work. See? Perfect. So now what I want to do is on change, we have our grant ID. I want to set that control to be disabled. So on here, I want to say that my input here of disabled is grant ID, and grant ID does not equal to nothing. Perfect. Now you can't change it. So I want to, just like I have on the modal, grab these two buttons, dump them here. And I want this to say back, and this to say save. And on this, I want to say disabled equals is valid for save. And then on click, we want to say save client. And this one's going to go to a router link to clients. Okay, we need to have a function called is valid for save. And I want to say if my grant ID and my grant ID does not equal to nothing, then I want to return true. Otherwise, I want to return false. And I want to say that this is a Boolean, and I need to add the this keyword. Cannot match any routes to go to clients. It's just that. Sorry about that. All right. When I was looking at this, now the save is enabled. Still doing the same thing. So instead of doing it like this, can I do this as a get property? So why is it letting me save? Oh, if it's not valid for save. That was it. Okay. And so now what I want to do is on my client, I want to look at the HTML here, and I want to say div ngIf my grant ID and my grant ID does not equal to nothing. And now I want to do a div for my ngIf get grant of my grant ID. dot grant name is equal to authorization code. Then I want to do a app client authorization code. Perfect. So now I'm going to inject that. And then we're going to want to pass down some props to it, I think. And there it is. So now we're going to do this for each of them. So we have one for implicit. We have one for resource owner password. And we have one for client credentials. So this is client credentials. This one is client resource owner password. And this one is client implicit. And it's good, it won't let me change it now. And if I went into grant and I made a new grant type, I can set it there. So now we're going to make another one called ng generate component called client other. We'll deal with that one in just a minute because this is going to be div ng if equals, and my all of these, if it does not equal grant authorization code, and it does not equal implicit, and it does not equal client credentials, and it doesn't equal resource password, then I want to do a app client other. Perfect. And now what we want to do is we want to create the individuals for the pages for the client types. So if I look at client implicit, and we're going to look at the TS here, and I want to make this thing extend my base controller, base component. And we want to pass in the store of the, it's a protected store of my store of iappstate, my protected HTTP service, and then a protected mat dialog called mat dialog. And we do super of the store HTTP and mat dialog. Okay. And so when this loads, we need to have a couple of different types on it. The first one is a client implicit create request. It looks like I can put all of these properties on client, but secret isn't going to work well. So I kind of still want to keep it individual. So we already have the grant ID passed down. And I can do that as an input variable. And then I want to have the client name, the client ID, the ID, the token expiration in minutes, the issuer URI, the audience, and let's start with that. Now, I want to make another controller or another component called base id.component.ts. And I want this to extend this. And it's called base ID component. Okay. And in this one, if I look at my singular grant, I can bring in this route subscription. And this activated route. And now we're going to have a ng on init, which is going to do a super.ng on init right after I got the subscription here. And then we also want to do the ng on destroy which is a super.ng on destroy. And then we want to do this .route subscription.unsubscribe. So this is a base ID component, which means that this also needs to have in it the protected route called the activated route. And that's it. So on my client component, I want to make this a base ID component, which needs to have a protected activated route. Call it a activated route. No, that's fine. And so now, when I look at client implicit, here, I want to say that we're going to pass as an input parameter grant ID, like that. And so now when you do the assign clients, you want to do the super.assign clients first, and then what I want to say is if my this, and we can get rid of this ID because this comes from the ID component. Like that. So if this .id and this .id does not equal to nothing, then I want to do a const of my client equals a this.clients.find, the one where the ID is equal to this.id. If we have a client, then I want to say my this.clientName equals client.clientName. This.clientID equals client.clientID. This.token expiration equals client.token expiration. This.issuer URI equals client.issuer URI. And the this.audience equals client.audience. We also want to say this .grant ID equals client.grant ID. Okay, so now on the front, here, we're going to pass in the types here. So I need to look at the client implicit needs to have a, I want to put a MAC card around it, but I don't think that's the right thing to do right now. So if I look at my grant, we can steal this and dump it in here. And we're going to call this my client implicit card. We don't care about the title, do we? Like that, why not? And then we're going to have the content, which is going to have this flex container. And then we want to have the client name, the client ID, the token expiration in minutes, the issuer URI, and the audience. There it is. Now, when I look at this one more time, okay, we need to look at the client implicit. We want to include required on all of these. We want to say create client, and this is going to go back to clients, which is just at nothing. So we're going to have a new function in here called create client. And I want to validate that this is working. So I want to say Angular CLI required example. Required. So you can do it with a here required here. And then we would need to validate the form. It's not too bad. We'll do that. So if I look here, And I'll make a new form control with these validators. So I just want to look at Angular CLI forms. Required. This for the CSS. Name.valid, hidden name.valid for the ID. So if I was to try this over here, we're just going to test this. And we're going to do this for client name. Where was the whole form? Label for power. Form control. Form. Hero form equals ng form. So we'll add that. Form. This, don't care about this. This is just easier if I do it myself. So we'll leave this alone. If I look in here now, we'll just leave this. And then what I want to do is I want to have a, up here, we want to say, in here I want to have a function called get has been submit. because I want to track basically if it's been submitted so that we know to validate it. So we want to say, are validations active? And we'll just add up a bool here which says, are validations active? So now when you do this, you can say true. And so now here, we can say if my validations are not active, or my client name so here, if the validations are active and the client name doesn't exist, or the client name is equal to nothing, like that. Try that again. Hey there, Haro Mero. Thank you so much for that follow. Appreciate it. If you have any questions what I'm working on, please don't hesitate to pop them into the chat. Let's just do this for now for a second. It's automatically populating. Perfect. Okay, so now I can say like this. Are your validations active? Try it again. Good. And then I want to say that the color here is red. I wonder if I can just do that. So we want to say Angular CLI color input. set text color. Because I think I can do it. Well, we'll do it this way. We can do it as a, we'll give it a div as alert danger. And then in my styles, we'll add those in here. Where did that page go that I was looking at? Where'd it go? This one. Let's just go ahead and comment these out for now and see what this does. Where'd that page go? Oh, I lost my page. So it gives me the little red indicators now. Because I've added in this form element, right? I kill the form. Still works even if I kill the form. Try that. Now it's showing them in red if they aren't there. See, like that. There, so that's right. With this nice little red block. So if I just did ng invalid, So if I look at this now, for when we inspect these elements, ng valid, and if I look at this one, ng invalid, dot required, just trying to get this formatting right here. I mean, that does look kind of right, but I don't want it to be there before it's been wired. So instead of doing these, I look at my mat input. Well, I look at this code. You're using mat labels on them. And then it's expanding to fill it. So if I was to change this and do a mat input, and I call it client name, I got really mad at me for whatever I just did. This is all I changed. Mat input is not a known here, so it's mat label, isn't it? Yeah, so we're going to leave these things all off. I don't like this. We'll add our own validations onto it, but for now we'll just leave it here. And so we have these fields which are being populated. On my, we'll worry about these in a minute. Additional fields that are on this are these booleans, and then we have a few more. So let's go over here, and we're going to add in on my client implicit component these allow local login is a boolean, allow external login is a boolean, validate, we'll say allow remember login is a boolean, validate issuer is a boolean, validate audience is a boolean, validate cores is a Boolean. Oh, enable external allow login. And then we have allow remember login equals client dot allow remember login this dot allow local login needs to be enable local login. Like that. And then we want to do the validate issuer, validate audience, validate cores. Okay, so now on this, I need to look for a mat checkbox, I think is what it's called, right? And so we're going to have a mat form field, if it'll let me, and it's going to be a mat checkbox of my ng model. And this one's going to be allow remember login. And this is only going to be here if my enable local login is true. So this is enable local login. And then we have another one here for enable external login. And then we have another one here for the validate issuer. And then we have another one for the validate audience. And then we have another one for the validate cores. Okay, it's unhappy with these because they can't be mat form fields. Looks good. try that one instead. I can see that it's not binding the way it's supposed to. Right there, ng model. It's the other way around. Now it's working. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. The next thing that we want to add in are our array objects. So if I look at the request here, we first need to have one for client scopes. I'm thinking about how I want to do this. So we're going to make a new component called client scopes. And I meant to put that inside of the shared folder. Okay, and so then down here, I'm going to make a new app-client scopes. Right there. And so when I do this, I want to pass in to client scopes a new input variable called client ID. And we want this to extend my base controller. I'm sorry, my base component. And now we need to have my protected store, which is a store of iappState, my protected HTTP, which is an HTTP service, and then a protected mat dialog, which is a mat dialog. Okay, and so you're going to want to have a button on this page. Which is just going to say add scope. And we want to do a click here, and it's going to be called add scope. And now we need to add a new modal for this. Is that what I want to do? Do I want to do it as a modal? Perfect. So we're getting there. But I got to stop for a little while. I've been going for a little over 5 hours, so I think we'll be back in the morning. We're going to start tomorrow at about 8 a.m., so make sure that you come out and hang out with us. If you have any questions, make sure you pop them into the channel at discord.pixelhorrorstudios.com. I also put all these videos up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Thanks for staying with me, guys, and have a great rest of your day. See you later. Bye.